After the incident that happened that day with the intestines in my sister's room, the environment around the house changed. Everyone felt uneasy. I personally started to feel like I was always being watched and followed. It was about a week after that the paranormal events continued around the house and I was the one mainly affected by it. My family did experience some minor events, but it wasn't anything extreme. This is one of the experiences my family witnessed. My sisters used to have a doll collection which was on top of their dresser. One day after school my sisters were in their room working on their homework. I was in the living room watching TV. Out of nowhere I heard both of my sisters scream and I see them running into the living room crying. Me being 7 years old got scared as well because I didn't know what was going on. Shortly after my grandma comes into the living room asking what was wrong. My oldest sister told her that the dolls they had on their dresser began to move on their own. Of course, my grandma didn't believe them. My grandma told them that is what happens when you watch too much TV, you start seeing things. My sister responded, "But we aren't watching TV, we were doing our homework." "Okay, let me go see what's going on." When my grandma comes back, she is upset and asks my sisters, "Is this some kind of a joke?" "What do you mean, Grandma?" asks my other sister. "Both of you are trying to scare me into a heart attack." My sisters look at each other in confusion. My grandma then says, "I almost tripped on the dolls that you left in the doorway. It spooked me because I thought it was a rat or something. Go pick up your dolls and get back to your school work." My sisters then asked me to go with them, but I was scared. I believed what they said considering the things I had witnessed within the last week. My sisters began to walk to their room and I stayed behind sitting on the couch when suddenly I get an uneasy feeling as if I was being watched. I decided to go with them. I ran towards them to try and spook them a bit. When we turned into the L-shaped hallway that lead to their room, we can see the doorway which is about 5 feet away and seen no dolls in the doorway. We slowly walked into the room and notice all the dolls are sitting on the dresser as if they never moved. My oldest sister then asks me to run to the kitchen to get a trash bag. I ran to the kitchen as if my life depended on it. When I came back to the room with the trash bag, my sister grabbed the dolls, threw them in the bag, and walked to the backyard to throw them away in the trash bin. Later that evening at exactly 6 p.m., I started to become sick to my stomach for no apparent reason. It was about dinner time and I went to tell my dad I wasn't feeling well. He told me to try and take a nap, and I could have dinner later. I went into my room, turned the light on and laid on my bed. As I began to fall asleep, I saw a shadow come over me. It gave off the feeling of heavy pressure on my body. All I remember after that is opening my eyes, not being able to move. I tried screaming for help but I could not speak. Suddenly I heard something moving in the left corner of my room where my closet was. I was able to lift my head up very little and looked over into the corner. What I saw was something you see in your nightmares, but I was seeing this in real life. It was an old lady dressed in torn black clothing. I could see her skin sagging from her bones with holes in her skin and maggots crawling out of them. I wasn't able to see her face that well and didn't really want to either way, but the stench she gave out was of rotting flesh. I then seen her moving towards me laughing, and at moments she sounded like a horse. When she was about to grab me, my dad knocks on the door and I'm able to move. I got up from my bed and ran to the door crying. I opened the door and hugged my dad. He then asks me what's wrong. I began to tell him what I had seen. He listened, but, in the end, he didn't believe me. He told me I had a bad dream and it was all going to be okay. He tells me after, come have something to eat, it's about 9:30, you need to eat, shower, and get ready for bed. The following day at school I was out of it all day. I didn't feel like myself. I felt as if something was taking over me. My teacher sent me to the nurse's office because she said that I looked sick. The nurse took my temperature, asked how I felt, and she said I needed to go home. When I got home, I went into my room. Almost immediately I felt fine. I felt normal. Shortly after I went into the kitchen to make myself a sandwich. My grandmother got upset and tells me, I thought you weren't feeling well. I didn't know what to say. I just walked away into my room and closed the door. Later on, in the evening at 6 p.m. again I began to feel sick. I didn't know what was wrong with me. I went to my dad to tell him how I felt. When my grandma comes and tells him he is lying, he pulled that off to get out of school today. My dad became upset and sent me away to my room. When I walked into my room, I sat on my bed feeling enraged, almost as if something else took over me. The feeling in my room begins to feel heavy, but I wasn't afraid anymore. I enjoyed it. It's almost as if whatever entity was there wanted me in my room at all times. This happened every day for about 2 weeks, including me leaving school early. I remember the last time I missed school completely. The entity didn't want me to leave too. It gave me symptoms of a fever. Once my dad left from work, it's as if I had healed and nothing was wrong with me. About an hour later I hear someone knocking on the door. It was a man. My grandma opened the door. It was a police officer with one of the school officials. They had come to check on how I was doing and forced me to get ready to go to school because I wasn't showing any symptoms of being sick. The officer told me that if I didn't go to school, they would take my dad to jail. I didn't want that, so I got dressed to go to school. The officer opened the back of his car and I sat. During school I was enraged. I wasn't happy that I was forced to leave my room. Around midday I made myself throw up in the lunchroom so I could be sent home. When my grandma came to pick me up, I told her, "See, I told you I was sick." When we got back to the house I went into my room and my grandma didn't allow me to close the door. I was in there the whole day. When my dad arrived, my grandma went to talk to him about what was going on. I could hear them from the living room. I heard my grandma tell him that I was talking to someone in the room but no one else was in there. She also told him I was speaking some other language or gibberish because she couldn't understand what I was saying. When I was hearing this, I got mad because I thought she was lying, trying to get me into trouble. Next thing I know I hear my dad talk about demons and possession. I was laughing when I heard that. About half an hour passed and I was surprised my dad had not came into the room to lecture me. About 5 minutes later the doorbell rings. It was a man from a church that my dad began to attend. I could hear them walking towards my room. My dad asks if they can come in. My response was, "Well, the door is open, isn't it?" The man approached me and told me everything is going to be okay. All I remember after that is throwing up what looked like black sludge in a bucket. I remember crying and asking my dad what was going on. He grabbed me and hugged me and told me, "Don't worry about it. Things are going to be different now. When you are older, I will explain to you what happened." As I got older, the curiosity of what happened stayed with me. I was about 10 when I asked my dad what happened that night. He asked if I was sure I wanted to know. I told him of course if do. He began to explain that after the church man, who was actually a pastor of the church my father was attending, the pastor started to pray over me and something took over. My behavior became very erratic. I began to speak in a different voice and in different languages. They prayed for hours and anointed me with oil. He told me that at times a voice of a woman would come out of me. For some reason this didn't scare me. If anything, it sparked curiosity. This is the continuation from my first story, Something Malevolent. Stay tuned for more stories that I will unveil. This is only the beginning. I appreciate your time. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button and turn on the notification icon to be alerted when a new tale is available. Please share.